Myst, Might, Mayhem. By Han Jung-Wioya. Chapter 188. The Test. Part 1. Half a moment ago. In the society leader's quarters located at the topmost floor of the main building. The society leader, whose face was obscured by shadows as he had his back to the lantern, had his face wrapped in bandages. The expression of the Shadow Clan master Huan Yacian, who was looking at him, was stiff, unlike his usual self. So this is why he kept hiding his appearance. As the Shadow Clan master who had thought it was because he had suffered an incurable injury, he couldn't help but be quite shocked. To him, the society leader said while wrapping the bandages, "Cough cough. Why do you think I showed this to you?" At the society leader's question, Shadow Clan master Huan Yacian couldn't easily answer. The intention behind hiding this until now and only revealing it to him, who was in charge of confidential matters and information. Of course, there were a few guesses that came to mind. The first was the impact it would have if this fact were to be known. It would likely cause a big commotion even within the Heaven and Earth Society. This is an obvious problem, and the next is indeed the society leader's trust. It seemed that even before, but especially after his illness had worsened, he didn't trust anyone except for the vice leader and his closest aides. If that's the case, perhaps you have determined that there are spies even within the inner fortress? At his words, Vice Leader Mong Xiaoqian snorted with a displeased expression. This meant affirmation. Spies. Spies were bound to appear from time to time. Even the Righteous Sect Alliance, a martial arts alliance opposing the Heaven and Earth Society, frequently sent spy organizations called the Silent Strides to investigate and disrupt the Heaven and Earth Society. The role of catching such spies belonged to the Shadow Clan. However, the fact that he had hidden it even from him, the head of the Shadow Clan, I am also a subject of suspicion. It was troublesome. Although he tried his best to manage his expression and not show it, Shadow Clan master Huan Yacian was not pleased with this situation. Because he was a person of the Fire Faith Order. The fact that he, as such a person, had become a subject of suspicion was not good for the future reconstruction of the Fire Faith Order. For a brief moment, Huan Yacian fell into contemplation. I must somehow regain trust. Otherwise, even the reconstruction of the Fire Faith Order might become impossible. Fortunately, the fact that he had revealed the hidden truth, even if it was for a test, meant that there was still some trust left. At that moment, the society leader, who had finished wrapping the bandages, got up from the bed. The society leader spoke. The Imperial Palace has requested the later generation disciples again this time. You are aware of that, right? For over a decade, the Imperial Guards, a special agency of the Imperial Palace, had been requesting young later generation disciples from the Righteous Sect Alliance and the Heaven and Earth Society, claiming to be reorganizing and reforming. Although it seemed like a simple request, it was a policy of the Imperial Palace to maintain its relationship with the martial arts world. The Righteous Sect Alliance had already been accepting their request and sending later generation disciples since the beginning, but the Heaven and Earth Society did not do so. To the society leader's words, Shadow Clan master Huan Yacian replied, yes. However, since it was a matter not approved by the society leader. Cough cough. It's not a matter worth approving. How can the martial arts world and the government coexist? Of course, this was not the only reason. The Imperial Palace and the government had taken the side of the Righteous Sect in the war between the Heaven and Earth Society and the Righteous Sect Alliance. As a result, the Heaven and Earth Society faced a disadvantageous situation in the war. This was the reason why the Heaven and Earth Society did not officially move in the direction the Imperial Palace wanted, even though they did not have a grudge against them. But we can no longer just stand by and watch. If we can no longer just stand by. Vice Leader. The society leader called for the Vice Leader. The Shadow Clan master looked at him with a puzzled expression. Then the Vice Leader continued. Officially, our association has rejected the Imperial Palace's request, But the society leader's direct subordinates have been making their own investments in addition to the spies being sent to the imperial palace. Their own investments? What does this mean? Could it be that they have built friendly forces on the imperial palace's side? When did they go to such lengths? While he was thinking, Vice Leader Mong Xiaoqian answered, Imperial Consort Xiao. Imperial Consort Xiao? She was one of the two consorts currently most favored by the emperor. That favor was so great that her 7-year-old child, overriding the grown children of the empress, became the crown prince. As a result, she became one of the 4 people wielding absolute power in the imperial palace. Huh. The Shadow Clan master clicked his tongue. Of course, there were also Shadow Clan spies in the imperial palace. However, most of the spies were active for information purposes, and there was no special intervention in the imperial palace. But while the society leader outwardly took a hardline stance, saying that he could not coexist with the imperial palace, he had intervened in the inner palace behind the scenes. In a sense, it was truly astonishing finesse. It's truly remarkable, without even a word to the Shadow Clan. It was just a precautionary measure. Anyway, through the information from Imperial Consort Xiao's side, we learned that this information is certain enough to take action. Then you plan to attempt a rescue? Yes. The answer came from the society leader. At his resolute voice, the Shadow Clan master felt his determination. The society leader had been continuously seeking that person instead of physicians since his illness had worsened. He would never let go of this opportunity. However, the situation of that person falling into the society leader's hands was just as bad as being detained in the imperial palace. What should be done about this? At that moment, the vice leader continued. So this time, we will accept the imperial palace's request. Then you're going to dispatch later generation disciples? That's right. At the vice leader's words, the Shadow Clan master silently looked at him. It was utterly ironic. He had predicted such a situation when he heard the news of that person's detention. Due to the emperor's illness, there were signs of internal strife in the imperial palace. Therefore, the various factions in power were fiercely competing to seize power in many departments. This was indeed an opportunity. Then, to recruit the later generation disciples to dispatch, no, there's no need for that. The vice leader shook his head. The Shadow Clan master Huan Yaxian was puzzled by this. To rescue that person imprisoned in the underground golden prison of the imperial palace, they needed to recruit suitable talents, so why was there no need for that? Could it be? You plan to proceed in secret? At the Shadow Clan master's words, the society leader coughed and smiled faintly. As expected, his prediction was correct. The society leader was someone who was cautious to the extent of being convinced that there were spies within, to the point of hiding it even from him. If that's the case, if they were to officially recruit and dispatch later generation disciples to the imperial palace for the mission, this information would flow to the mastermind through the spies, and there would be significant obstacles. Then what do you plan to do? If recruitment was impossible, they had no choice but to secretly designate and issue secret orders. However, Shadow Clan master, did you separately inform your disciple? Inform? No. I just told him to bring him straight here. Suddenly, the Shadow Clan master stopped mid-answer and frowned. Then, as if glaring at the vice leader, he asked, "You're not planning to send my disciple, are you?" "That's right." At his answer, the Shadow Clan master was at a loss for words. He had a hunch, but it turned out to be true. In the case of secret orders being issued, it was often carried out abruptly like this. That was to prevent information from spreading outside. However, there was an issue to raise here. Vice Leader. That child has just completed the Corpse Blood Valley and become my disciple. He's not yet at the level to take on a dispatch mission. If he passed the gate of the Corpse Blood Valley as the top disciple, his abilities are sufficient. But you know that child's background, don't you? I trust that child belonging to us, but... Is there a problem with trust? Pardon? I heard that he showed his will to be loyal to our sect in front of everyone at the Corpse Blood Valley's closing ceremony. It reached the ears of the society leader and vice leader. As expected, they were aware of most things, operating their own direct intelligence unit. However, it was utterly unacceptable. Even if that child, Mok Jayangan, had made a pledge, there was no way the society leader or vice leader would believe it right away. Rather, they were figures who would continue to test that child for a while to verify it. But they're saying they'll entrust such an important mission to that child, believing in him? What are they thinking? The Shadow Clan master spoke in a troubled voice. I'm grateful for your words as his teacher, but if that child, who hasn't even received training as a spy yet, is entrusted with such a mission and fails, he's not being sent alone. Pardon? There are already 3 people who have been dispatched unofficially in advance, and with the official dispatch as per the request, your disciple and 2 others will be additionally dispatched. Imperial Consort CO side wanted trustworthy personnel, so we had to select quickly, and your disciple was inevitably chosen. Inevitably? The Shadow Clan master's eyes narrowed. Could this really be explained away as inevitable? If Mok Jayanan were not a hostage of the righteous faction and had been his disciple for 10 years, it might be an understandable selection. This was probably a test? It wasn't a test just for himself. It seemed to include a test for that child, Mok Jayangan, as well. It was truly troublesome. To him, the vice leader spoke with a soft sigh. Don't be too dissatisfied. I'm not only sending your beloved disciple but also my own son. Your son, you mean Mong Muyak? That's right. At this, Shadow Clan Master Huan Yasian couldn't hide his inner surprise. He had thought it was a test to make things difficult for him and Mok Jayangan, but if it included Vice Leader Mong Xiuqion's son Mong Muyak, the matter was different. Wasn't Mong Muyak the successor of Vice Leader Mong Xiuqion and one of the 5 tigers, known as the Heaven and Earth Society's greatest later generation disciples? Even he is being dispatched on such a dangerous mission? What is the intention? Anyway, he had no choice but to follow the society leader's orders. It was definitely not a desperate measure to reassure him. However, the fact that they were even sending the vice leader's son. Could it be? Huan Yasian glanced at the vice leader. Vice leader Mong Xiuqion's eyes were strangely bitter. Seeing this reaction, it seemed that the vice leader was also not very pleased with sending his child on this rescue mission. It seemed to be to prove his loyalty to the society leader. That position is not very good either. Shadow Clan Master Huan Yasian clicked his tongue inwardly. It was so pitiful that even the vice leader, one of the closest aides, had to continue proving his loyalty in this way. Since my son, the vice commander of the society leader's direct subordinates, is also being dispatched, do not raise any more objections. I understand. Anyway, it was impossible to object further. If he continued to object, it would only incur the society leader's anger and suspicion. There's no other way. Now that it had come to this, it seemed he had no choice but to trust Mok Jayangan. Fortunately, Mok Jayangan was a person of the Fire Faith Order, just like himself. No. Come to think of it, it might actually be for the best. It could be an opportunity to prevent that person from falling into the society leader's hands. At that moment, click. The society leader opened the window. Then, looking down, he spoke. Cough cough. They're here. What do you mean? The 3 people to be dispatched. With those words, the society leader's eyes narrowed as he looked down at the training grounds below. That guy? The hostage of the righteous faction who had mastered the moon sword technique. The society leader's gaze became strange. He had thought that with the existence of Wai Soyan, the earth-preserving sword and the moon sword technique were meaningless. That's why he had sent him to the Corpse Blood Valley without any lingering attachment, but not only did he survive, he even became the Shadow Clan Master's disciple. Truly a peculiar child. In the end, he will find his place. That is fate and the natural order. The words that person had said came to mind. Then, is all of this because of that so-called natural order? Even the fact that that kid survived there. After looking down for a while, the society leader grabbed a sword technique manual and lightly waved his fingers. At that moment, whoosh! Sharp, profound energy rose from him. Shadow Clan Master Huan Yacian, who was watching from behind, was gripped by a sense of unease. What is he trying to do? While he was puzzled, the society leader continued to wave the sword technique manual. He wanted to watch closely what he was doing, but he couldn't. At that moment, the society leader, who had been waving the sword technique manual as if commanding a battle formation, suddenly stopped his hand and trembled. Then, huh? Look at this guy. He showed a reaction as if it were absurd. He even had his eyes wide open. What could have happened to make him react like that? While thinking that, bam! So society leader. The society leader jumped out the window. The startled vice leader Mong Xiaoqian and Shadow Clan Master Huan Yacian ran and looked down below the window. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The society leader, who had landed on the ground with a light body, glanced at the sword that had fallen on the ground, then turned his gaze back to Mok Jiangan and asked, "How did you scatter the qi infused in the sword?" "What?" At those words, the eyes of Sieb Chen, the third captain of the main building, widened. What does this mean? Mok Jiangan scattered the qi infused in the sword? No. Wasn't it him who blocked the sword flying at Mok Jiangan and severed the qi to stop it? It was utterly incomprehensible. At that moment, could it be? Sieb Chen recalled the moment when the sword had revived for a moment and then lost strength and fell. Could it be that it wasn't the society leader who had withdrawn the qi? No. Something is strange. If it was a method of creating a net with a saber technique like he did, the connected qi could be severed, but otherwise, how was that possible? Tap 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 tap. At that moment, two more people landed in the training grounds. They were none other than Vice Leader Mong Xiaoqian and Shadow Clan Master Huan Yacian. Not knowing exactly what had happened below, they were puzzled and asked, "Society leader, why are you?" Swish. The society leader raised his hand, signaling them not to intervene. At this, Vice Leader Mong Xiaoqian stopped speaking and looked around. The hilt of a sword lying on the training ground floor. And seeing the numerous saber marks filling the surroundings, he could roughly guess what had happened. Did the society leader test them? Judging from him waving the sword technique manual, it seemed he had used art of sword control. However, midway, the society leader had looked absurd. Huh? Look at this guy. Did someone among them surprise the society leader? But was that even possible? No matter how severe his illness was, the only ones who could block the society leader's art of sword control were the two people with the title of 8 stars or the head of the Elder Council, not anyone else. At that moment, the society leader spoke again. Why is there no answer? Following the society leader's gaze, the two executives also turned towards Mok Jiangan. Then Mok Jiangan spoke. "This lowly one does not know what you mean." Everyone was puzzled by his response, as if he truly had no idea. At this, the society leader soon chuckled. Cough cough. Do you think you can deceive my eyes? It was clearly you who did it. The society leader spoke with a confident voice. Then Mok Jiangan, with his head lowered, repeated the same words again. This lowly one truly does not know what you mean. At his words, the society leader scoffed. Then, is that so? Then this will be an unfortunate accident. Swish. As soon as those words ended, the society leader lightly nodded his head. Clang. Swish. A sword from the weapon rack on one side of the training ground drew itself and flew towards the head of Mok Jiangan, who was kneeling with his hands clasped. How? Shadow Clan Master Huan Yacian flinched for a moment at the society leader's sudden outburst. It was because he had agonized in an instant whether to block it or not. But at that moment, something astonishing happened. Bam! Clang! The sword flying towards Mok Jaehyun's head suddenly stopped as if it had lost strength and fell to the ground. Everyone who witnessed this scene couldn't hide their shock. That youngster blocked the society leader's art of sword control without moving a single finger? Chapter 189. The Test. Part 2. Everyone in the training grounds couldn't hide their shock. It was something no one had expected. The society leader, known as one of the six heavens and the current peak of the martial arts world, and rumored to have surpassed the Wall of Walls, was a truly unrivaled supreme grandmaster without equal. The art of sword control he wielded was not a technique that a mere later generation disciple, a youngster, could block. However, an unbelievable event occurred. Clang! The flying sword stopped right in front of Mok Jaehyun and fell. This shocked not only Mong Muyak and Seop Chun, the two people of the five tigers responsible for the next generation, but also the executive's Shadow Clan master Hwan Yseon and vice leader Mong Seo Cheon. How on earth did he do it? Hwan Yseon looked at Mok Jaehyun with wide eyes. He was still kneeling with his head lowered, paying his respects. But the sword had fallen midway. Judging from the society leader's reaction, it was definitely not him who had done it. Is this guy him? Vice leader Mong Seo Cheon's eyes flashed with surprise. That was because, as the one managing even the society leader's direct information department, he was familiar with most of Mok Jaehyun's background. He was a youngster who had been taken as a hostage of the righteous faction's Yun Mok Sword Manor just a month ago. According to the report he had heard from Myeongdaung's son Yun, although he had talent with the sword, he had started martial arts too late and had no great prospects. Was it possible for such a guy to do this? Who the hell is this guy? Based on the chi perceived externally, he was a peak expert. With this level of skill, forget blocking art of sword control, he should have been instantly pierced through. But how on earth did he do it? Unlike the two people who were puzzled, there was someone who was admiring him. She was none other than Chong Ryong. Huh. Chong Ryong was watching everything from inside the wooden puppet. No one here knew Mok Jaehyun's true strength, but she was aware of his true face. This mortal guy is truly a monster. She couldn't help but be amazed. That was because, although Mok Jaehyun had reached the realm of the transformation, art of sword control was an even higher level technique, so it was not something Mok Jaehyun could handle yet. However, after seeing the chi connection to the sword being severed twice, she could be certain. To handle the death chi so delicately. An exclamation naturally escaped. In conclusion, art of sword control was a high-level technique that gathered chi in the sword itself and manipulated it. Therefore, it was practically impossible to sever the chi connection using the method Seop Chun had employed. However, Mok Jaehyun had taken a difficult gamble. He had used the death chi that disrupts the yang chi to scatter the society leader's chi concentrated in art of sword control. At first glance, it might seem easy, but in reality, it was not at all. To send the death chi outside the body and intervene in art of sword control, which moved quickly across space, required delicate and precise control. This was something that couldn't be done without innate senses and tremendous concentration. The mortal's potential and growth speed are truly. It was beyond the realm of humans. From the perspective of someone watching closely, it was so remarkable that he could only be thought of as a monster. However, apart from this amazement, there was also a concern. You've made a mistake, mortal. Chong Ryong looked at the society leader, whose face was wrapped in bandages, revealing only his eyes. He's probably that person's descendant. Whether he's his son or grandson. This will only invite that person's scrutiny. It was an unavoidable situation since he had aimed for his life, but it would have been better if he had moved his body and dodged with difficulty. Disrupting a high-level technique in this way was more likely to raise suspicion. If it were her, she could have even killed Mok Jaehyun on the spot. However, ha 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 ha. The society leader, who had been staring at Mok Jaehyun, suddenly burst into hearty laughter. Then he soon began coughing again. Cough cough. Blood was mixed in with his cough. Seeing this, Vice Leader Mong Xiaoqian spoke in a perplexed voice, "Society leader. You shouldn't overexert yourself." Cough cough. Swish. The coughing society leader soon waved his hand lightly and said, "No, no." The society leader straightened his waist. Then, approaching Mok Jiangan, he said, "Well, what excuse will you give now? Will you say you didn't do it again this time?" At his words, Mok Jiangan didn't answer. Then Vice Leader Mong Xiaoqian pressed, "Won't you answer right away? This guy, truly." It was the moment when the angry Mong Xiaoqian was about to express his rage. Mok Jiangan spoke. "Then I have no choice. Yes, I did it." With those words, Mok Jiangan raised his head and looked at the society leader confidently. Seeing his behavior, Vice Leader Mong Xiaoqian was dumbfounded. Who was the person present here? It was the society leader of the Heaven and Earth Society. How could someone who had pledged loyalty to the sect and was subordinate behave so impudently? How insolent! Xing. Vice Leader Mong Xiaoqian soon half-drew the sword from the scabbard at his waist. Then, Shadow Clan Master Huan Yaxian blocked his way, clasping his hands together in a formal greeting, and said, "Vice Leader, please calm down." "Calm down? Are you defending him because he's your disciple? How could that be? But isn't a disciple's mistake also the responsibility of the teacher who taught him? So please reprimand me instead. Now, to say that, enough." Swoosh. At that moment, Vice Leader Mong Xiaoqian and Shadow Clan Master Huan Yaxian looked at the society leader with startled eyes, overwhelmed by his domineering spirit. This Qi is unbelievable. How can he be called someone with a severe illness? The Qi emanating from the society leader was so immense that it was suffocating, enough to surprise even the two masters. Mok Jiangan's left eyelid trembled even more as he watched this. It was truly admirable, even though only a part of it was released. He had been curious about what it meant to surpass the wall of walls, and it definitely exceeded his expectations by far. It would be reckless. If this was the level with only a partial release of Qi, if he used his full strength, it seemed he could annihilate everyone present, including himself, not in a few moves but within a few breaths. The level itself was completely different. Is this the current pinnacle of the martial arts world? While he was in awe, the society leader spoke. "Since you've confessed with your own mouth that you did it, shall we hear how you did it?" At his question, Chong Ryan hurriedly advised. "Make up an excuse. Anyway, living humans cannot detect the death Qi, the Qi of the dead, so there's no way for him to find out." "Right. That's what we should do." Of course, Mok Jiangan also intended to do so. However, that Qi you used to intervene in the art of sword control and scatter it. It's quite unique. At his words, Mok Jiangan's expression stiffened. Chong Ryan was equally surprised. How could that be? The death Qi was essentially an undetectable Qi. It was not something living humans could sense, so no martial artist who had faced Mok Jiangan until now had noticed it. But did the society leader really sense it? Chong Ryan was momentarily amazed but spoke calmly. "He might be intentionally probing you because he can't detect the Qi. Don't fall for it, mortal." "Do you really think so?" Mok Jiangan was also puzzled. The strength of the death Qi was that it was a Qi that living humans couldn't detect. But if they could sense it, that advantage would be lost. At this, Mok Jiangan cautiously parted his lips. "You flatter me. I merely applied the Qi of my sect." "Your sect?" "Yes." The reason he attributed it to his sect was because of the martial arts world's tacit rules. Even in a relationship where loyalty was pledged, unless it was a special case. Martial arts were a precious asset and secret to that martial artist, so they wouldn't pry into it. Mok Jiangan had aimed for this. However, is that so? But from what I feel, although the Shadow Clan Master's Qi has a Yin tendency, your Qi seems quite complex. At those words, Shadow Clan Master Huan Yaxian also frowned and looked at Mok Jiangan. At this, Mok Jayanun's eyes narrowed. He hoped it was just a probe, but it seemed the society leader was truly detecting his chi. Although he could waver, Mok Jayanun spoke calmly. Before my master taught me martial arts, I already learned various martial arts, so that's why. You learned various martial arts? Yes. There's the martial art of the Yun Mok sword manner. I believe the society leader is well aware of the reason I came here. At these words, the society leader's eyes turned strange. It was because he immediately understood the meaning of what Mok Jayanun had said. The moon sword technique. That person had deciphered that cursed secret manual that no one else could master. Recalling this, the society leader chuckled and soon spoke with his hands clasped behind his back. I did want to see it at least once, but it seems this is the reason why you were chosen by that secret manual. Pardon? Should we take another look? With those words, the society leader nodded his head. Then the sword that had fallen to the ground rushed towards Mok Jayanun. Just dodge it. Chong Ryong shouted. However, Mok Jayanun's thought was different. He felt he needed to know for sure whether the society leader was probing him or if he had truly detected his chi. If he had really detected the death chi, it was suspicious for him to continuously test him like this. Therefore, clang! Mok Jayanun concentrated his death chi and scattered the chi of the sword flying at him with art of sword control once again. No. Didn't I tell you to just dodge it? No. Let's see first. What? I need to know if he really can detect death chi. Anyway, if someone in the society leader's position suspected that chi, it would be difficult to keep dodging. In that case, it was better to verify its authenticity, Mok Jayanun judged. Right at that moment. Your senses are excellent. Then can you handle two? What? Swish. The society leader grasped the sword technique manual and lightly waved his hand. Then, two swords were drawn from the swords hanging on the wall, and they simultaneously rushed towards Mok Jayanun. Swish. Swish. The two swords flew from different directions, aiming for Mok Jayanun's head and chest. This. Chong Ryong clicked her tongue. Even intervening in one art of sword control required tremendous concentration. But wielding art of sword control from different directions meant that the society leader had already figured out the weakness of the method of scattering chi. It seemed he was not called one of the six heavens for nothing. This time, there's no choice. You have to dodge or block it. She thought that even without her advice, Mok Jayanun would have no choice but to move this time. However, swish. Swish. He didn't move even when the swords were flying right in front of him. The startled Chong Ryong shouted. Mortal! It was right at that moment. Clang! Clang! An astonishing scene unfolded before her eyes. The two swords flying from different directions lost strength almost simultaneously and fell to the ground. Chong Ryong was dumbfounded. He simultaneously scattered the chi of art of sword control flying from different directions at the same time. This guy. Huh. How could he do it to this extent? It was almost impossible without exhibiting a level of concentration that split one's mind in two. It seemed she had underestimated mortal. However, she wasn't the only one surprised. You truly astonish me. At the society leader's words, Vice Leader Mong Xiao-cheon looked at the society leader with wide eyes. Judging from the society leader's surprised eyes, it seemed to be true. The society leader was astonished? Although he was said to have a severe illness, the society leader was one of the six heavens, the current peak of the martial arts world. A youngster astonished such a supreme grandmaster of the highest level? No, it was even ridiculous to call him a youngster. At the point where he could block the society leader's art of sword control in this way, that guy had already surpassed the level of a later generation disciple. Who the hell is this guy? Where did such a person pop up from? It went beyond simply dismissing him as a hostage from the righteous faction. He seemed quite dangerous. Bam! It was at that moment. Thud. Suddenly, the society leader's figure appeared in front of Mok Jae-un. The society leader placed his hand on the shoulder of Mok Jae-un, who was kneeling on one knee. Swish! I missed his movement. Mok Jae-un, who had reached the realm of the transformation and mastered the clear and manifest water-crossing steps of the eldest young master Na Yelriang, enabling him to move at ultra-high speeds, was confident in handling most speeds. However, the society leader's lightness skill was completely different from the clear and manifest water-crossing steps. It seemed to grab and pull the space. Moreover, this is? The ground sank centered around the society leader's soles. How could a stepping technique with such weight possess such swiftness? At that moment of puzzlement. Bam! Gasp! At that moment, Mok Jae-un frowned and looked at the society leader. The inner force penetrating through his shoulder. It was like the rough waves surging in the ocean. Usually, when injecting inner force into the opponent's body, one would approach carefully as it could cause injury, but the society leader was not like that at all. Squish! The society leader's vast inner force tried to destroy his body from within. If he remained still, his heart meridian could rupture, and his life would be in danger. In the end, he had no choice but to resist. Mok Jae-un aroused his death chi and scattered the society leader's chi surging into his body like waves. Whoosh! If it were chi of a similar level, he would have easily scattered it. However, the society leader's true chi, having surpassed the wall of walls and reached the profound realm, was at a level that even Mok Jae-un, who had reached the transformation realm, couldn't touch. The true chi surging in was too vast to be completely scattered even with the death chi. Drip! Drip! The clothes centered around his shoulder were stained with blood. His blood vessels had burst. Grit! Mok Jae-un clenched his teeth. If it was difficult even with the death chi, there was only one way. I have to let it flow out. Mok Jae-un guided the chi entering through his shoulder to the Yongchen acupoint on the soles of his feet without forcefully responding to it. Then, crack! Rumble! The stone floor of the training grounds cracked, and the after effects of the true chi rose. Ho! Letting the chi flow out. Not bad. Then can you let this out too? Swoosh! At that moment, the society leader's chi intensified even more. Chi twice as strong as before was surging in. Ugh! At this, Mok Jae-un's face reddened, and soon, his blood vessels bulged out. His body was already under severe strain. If this continued, he might really become crippled or even die. Enduring this, Shadow Clan Master Huan Yaxian, who had been watching, finally stepped forward. Society leader. That's enough. Do not interfere. Vice leader Mong Xiaoqian blocked him. If the society leader had decided to kill him, no one could object. Even if it was the Shadow Clan Master, Mok Jae-un's master. How did it come to this? Shadow Clan Master Huan Yaxian was restless. Mok Jae-un was his disciple and practically a member of the Fire Faith Order. He couldn't lose him in a situation like this. However, bam! At that moment, the society leader removed his hand from Mok Jae-un's shoulder. As soon as he removed his hand, Mok Jae-un, with severe internal injuries, vomited blood and knelt on the ground. Thud! The society leader, looking down at Mok Jae-un, clicked his tongue. He had aggressively injected true chi to the point where all the blood vessels in his body were about to rupture. He couldn't even let it flow out. If it was true chi that caused blood vessels to burst, anyone would find it difficult to endure that pain. However, this fellow didn't let out a single groan or show any signs of pain even in such agony. It seemed he hadn't passed the corpse blood valley for nothing. Interesting. You don't just have one type of chi in your body, but quite a variety of chi. Huh. Huh. Your innate senses, mental strength, endurance, everything is extraordinary. The atmosphere had been as if he would kill Mok Jae-un at any moment, but suddenly, the praises flowing from the society leader's mouth made everyone look at him in puzzlement. Has Mok Jae-un passed the society leader's test? At that moment, unexpected words spilled from the society leader's mouth. All of this is beyond what the Shadow Clan master can handle. Society leader, what on earth, stay still. Shadow Clan master. The society leader extended his hand and warned the Shadow Clan master not to interfere. Then he looked at Mok Jiangan and said, "What do you think? Would you like to become my fourth disciple?" Chapter 190. The Test. Part 3. What do you think? Would you like to become my fourth disciple? At those words from the society leader's mouth, everyone in the training grounds was shocked. Just a moment ago, they had been concerned about the situation escalating due to his excessive use of force, so this was a completely unexpected situation for them. Disciple? What does this mean? The one who showed the most notable reaction was Mong Muyak. As the vice leader's son, his eyes widened as he alternately looked at the society leader and Mok Jiangan. That was because there was something Mong Muyak, who took great pride in learning the sword, had longed for all his life, receiving teachings from the society leader. Clench. Mong Muyak's fist tightened. Although his father's influence played a role, how tirelessly had he worked to catch the society leader's attention after entering the inner fortress of the main building. Despite becoming one of the 5 tigers, known as the Heaven and Earth Society's greatest later generation disciples, the society leader had never even spared him a glance. Therefore, the society leader's proposal was both infuriating and envious. On the other hand, the reaction of Siep Chun, another member of the 5 tigers and the 3rd captain of the main building, was different. Rather, his gaze toward Mok Jiangan became close to admiration. He felt the same envy, but he had inwardly been impressed while watching him undergo the society leader's test. He's an incredible guy. Especially, his ability to endure the pain of his blood vessels bursting during the society leader's inner force test without letting out a single groan or showing a pained expression was impressive. It made him wonder what he would have done in that situation. Is he the type of person who rises to the top? With that level of skill, it seemed sufficient for the society leader to covet him. However, while it was something to congratulate Mok Jiangan for, he wasn't sure if this was okay. As far as he knew, hadn't Mok Jiangan become Shadow Clan Master's disciple through the Corpse Blood Valley's closing ceremony just half a month ago? Siep Chun glanced at Shadow Clan Master Huan Yaxian with a concerned look. Naturally, having his disciple taken away wouldn't be pleasant. Is it okay? Contrary to his concern, the Shadow Clan Master's expression was fine. Rather, until just a moment ago, he had been restless, worrying about what would happen to his disciple, but now, his lips were twitching as if he was trying to hide his excitement. Siep Chun's guess was accurate. To have such an opportunity come. If it were other executives, they would likely object to this situation. It was a natural principle. Who would be pleased to have such a talented disciple taken away? Of course, in a similar context, there was a sense of regret, but to the Shadow Clan Master, Mok Jiangan was not only his disciple but also a member of the same Fire Faith Order. Having such a member become a disciple of the society leader, the leader of the Heaven and Earth Society, was a golden opportunity for the Fire Faith Order to enter the center of the organization. There was a saying that it was darkest under the lamp. He believed that Mok Jiangan becoming the society leader's disciple would lay a great foundation for the reconstruction of the Fire Faith Order. At this, Shadow Clan Master Huan Yaxian slightly nodded his head while looking at Mok Jiangan. It meant not to worry about him. Society leader. At that moment, Vice Leader Mong Xiaoqian intervened. Why are you doing this? Please pause for a moment. Pause? Are you objecting to my authority right now? At the society leader's tone, which sounded displeased, Vice Leader Mong Xiaoqian hurriedly clasped his hands together, lowered his head, and said, "That's not it. If the society leader, the leader of the sect, desires it, who could raise any objections? Then why are you doing this? I'm just concerned." Concerned? Yes. Cough cough. What are you concerned about? At the society leader's question, Vice Leader Mong Xiaoqian cautiously spoke. That child named Mok Jiangan became Shadow Clan Master's disciple through the Corpse Blood Valley's closing ceremony. And? Having multiple masters is not a problem, but if the society leader takes in that child, the meaning becomes different. It becomes forcibly taking a disciple. At those words, one of the society leader's eyes revealed through the bandages narrowed. He didn't seem very pleased. However, Vice Leader Mong Xiaoqian didn't stop speaking even while being mindful of his mood. Even if the society leader asks for the Shadow Clan Master's understanding and accepts that child as a disciple, in this case, there may be objections from the Elder Council and executives. Objections from the Elder Council and executives? What does that mean? All the disciples you have taken in are from prestigious martial arts families of our sect. They are the children of those who have made great contributions since the sect's founding. At those words, the society leader scoffed. It was because he had understood what the vice leader was trying to say. Are you saying that his background is a problem? Yes, no matter how much it is the society leader's decision, this alone will invite objections from the Elder Council and executives. Objections. Although he has pledged loyalty, that child is originally a hostage from the righteous faction. He has no definite merits yet and hasn't been verified, so it seems right to reconsider readily accepting him as a disciple. At these words, his son Mong Muyak nodded in agreement. Indeed, his father's opinion was correct in this regard. If he were to accept a hostage from the righteous faction as a disciple, complaints would sprout up everywhere, and people would start doubting the society leader's true intentions. Already, due to his illness, he hadn't shown himself at official events for a long time, so hoping that there wouldn't be any complaints at all was truly a miscalculation. No way. While the vice leader was objecting, there was someone else who was also objecting. It was none other than Chang Ryong. As soon as the society leader made the proposal, Chang Ryong flew into a rage and sent an opposing opinion to Mok Jiangan. Ignore that bastard's proposal. It's a clan that plays with others using flattery and deception. It could be dangerous instead. Mok Jiangan was puzzled by her agitation. In fact, this was a good opportunity. Even without going through other disciples, it meant he had gained an opportunity to directly communicate with the society leader. Moreover, since he was already at odds with the eldest young master Na Yelriang, if he became the society leader's disciple, Na Yelriang would lose justification to openly attack him. That way, he could expand his power under the society leader's protection. There was no way Chang Ryong wouldn't know about this golden opportunity. However, for her to object to this extent. Is it a grudge? Just from her voice, he could tell how angry she was. Because of that, Mok Jiangan could be certain. She wanted the destruction of the Heaven and Earth Society due to a deep-seated grudge, but at the center of that grudge was the society leader. No, to be precise, it would be the society leader's predecessor. However, with the passage of 100 years, the previous society leader would have already grown old and died. Therefore, for Chang Ryong, the focus of all her resentment would be his bloodline. She can't tolerate me entering under the bloodline of someone who is practically her enemy? It seemed that was her state of mind. Mok Jiangan was not used to the emotions of others. However, he had directly experienced the emotion of hatred when he lost his grandfather, so he could fully understand why she was getting emotional. Nevertheless, please calm down. Calm down? This isn't a matter to be calm about. Even without becoming that bastard's disciple, there are plenty of ways for you and I to exact our revenge. So don't fall for his empty flattery. Then it would take too long. You, mortal. Chang Ryong. Are you going to ignore my advice again and do as you please? Emotions are clouding your judgment. Nonsense. I am sufficiently rational. There's an opportunity to officially approach the society leader, and it's darkest under the lamp, so we can foster strength and lure him into letting his guard down. Chang Ryong, you should be able to think of this much. At Mok Jiangan's words, Chang Ryong panted and didn't answer. It was difficult for her to control her anger due to her grudge, but she recognized that Mok Jaeongn's opinion made more sense at the moment. Think rationally. Shouldn't we rejoice instead? Rejoice? Yes. Do you think this would be joyful for me? Yes. It's joyful. Wouldn't it be the best for Chong Ryong if, after becoming the society leader's disciple and gaining his trust, we could plunge the blade of betrayal into his heart? At Mok Jaeongn's excited voice, as if the mere thought of it thrilled him, Chong Ryong's anger subsided for a moment. She had only thought of killing him, her anger flaring up at the thought of his bloodline. But after hearing Mok Jaeongn's words, she realized he was right. Letting that bastard's bloodline know what betrayal is. Yes. This mortal guy was right. Just killing him wouldn't be satisfying. They needed to take away everything related to him and make him experience the same feelings as her. Only then would this 100-year-old grudge be resolved. Can you really do that to him? If you want. Then do as you wish. Chong Ryong said. At this, Mok Jaeongn's lips twitched, then he knelt on one knee, clasped his hands together in a formal greeting toward the society leader, and spoke in a loud voice. How could I refuse such an honor when the society leader is willing to accept me? Please take me in as your disciple. At Mok Jaeongn's words, Vice Leader Mong Seocheon shook his head. Please reconsider. Although he said that, Mong Seocheon had already half given up. The society leader never took back the words he had spoken. Throughout his presentation of the reasons, the society leader had been looking at him with a displeased gaze. The outcome was already predictable. He would eventually push through with his intention. At that moment, the society leader spoke. Do you think I would care about such things? Is it going as expected? However, the society leader, who was about to continue, suddenly frowned and didn't speak. This continued for a brief moment. It was unclear why he was suddenly acting like this. Then the society leader continued. However, the vice leader's opinion also makes sense. Pardon? He has pledged loyalty, but there's the issue of his background, and his merits haven't been sufficiently verified, so objections from the Elder Council and executives are natural. What? Suddenly, the society leader was advocating for his opinion. Although he had his moods, he rarely withdrew his opinion in situations like this. But why was he doing this? While he was puzzled, the society leader said. However, this child is the sole successor of the moon sword technique. That alone is enough to appease the concerns about his background. Isn't that right? That's right. The moon sword technique. He had forgotten about that. Among the Elder Council and executives, except for a few, no one knew about this fact. However, if they were to learn that Mok Jaeongung had mastered the moon sword technique, which had been lost for 100 years, it would create a huge stir. Not considering this important factor was an error in judgment. At that, the society leader continued. However, this time I will respect the vice leader's opinion. Pardon? If he successfully completes this mission, this child's merits and ideals will be sufficiently verified. Isn't that right? That's. The society leader's words are correct. This mission was very important. Whether the society leader could return to the front lines or not could be determined through this mission. Therefore, if he were to succeed in this mission, it would be enough to acknowledge his merits. Moreover, if he goes to the imperial palace, it will be swarming with those righteous faction. Bastards. If this guy doesn't ask for their help or attempt to escape, he will certainly be verified as a person of our sect. His rapid growth and attitude were quite irritating. He even thought that he might become a poison to the society leader instead. However, if all of the above were satisfied, there would be no problem with the society leader accepting him as a disciple. Rather, it would be a blessing for the sect to gain an outstanding disciple. But I should tell Muyak just in case. He felt he should have his son Mong Muyak monitor him. If he were to discover even the slightest hint of different intentions, he would need to swiftly deal with him. At that, the society leader turned his gaze to Mok Jiangun and said, "Did you hear? Yes. Complete this mission successfully. Then I will accept you as my fourth disciple." "The mission?" Mok Jiangun asked in puzzlement. He had come here without hearing anything in the first place. Then the society leader chuckled and pointed at the vice leader with a nod, saying, "The vice leader will explain the mission." With those words, the society leader approached Mok Jiangun and whispered, "I hope you will meet my expectations." Then the society leader turned around, his hands clasped behind his back, and left the training grounds. Watching his departing figure, Mok Jiangun licked his lips. This has become troublesome. He thought it was an opportunity to directly become the society leader's disciple. If that happened, he believed he could find out about the ghost sword within a short period of time, but as expected, nothing was easily resolved. He had no choice but to take on that so-called mission. Only then could he become the fourth disciple. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Thump thump. Walking along the corridor, the society leader placed his palm against the wall and coughed violently. Cough cough. The coughing lasted longer than usual. Next to him, someone who had been hiding revealed themselves from a shadowed area. "You have overexerted yourself. It seems so for the first time in a while." The society leader wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and spoke. The guy was more outstanding than expected, so he had to draw out more true chi, straining himself quite a bit. The person who revealed themselves tried to support the society leader, who was leaning against the wall. Then the society leader shook his head. "No. It's fine. But there's no need to make a fuss. I know my body better than anyone." "Understood." At the society leader's words, the man in the shadows slightly lowered his head and answered. Then, as if suddenly remembering, the society leader asked him, "By the way, what was that thing you said earlier? That the guy seemed familiar?" It was the society leader who had reluctantly postponed accepting him as a disciple due to the voice transmission telling him to stop. If it weren't for that, he wouldn't have accepted the vice leader's objection. At the society leader's question, the person obscured by the shadows answered, "It's not certain." "Not certain?" "He definitely resembles someone, but his identity, name, everything is too different." "Resembles? Who does he resemble?" Cough cough. The society leader coughed violently and staggered. The man hurriedly walked forward to support him. Thanks to that, the man's face, which had been obscured by shadows, was revealed under the bright lantern light. He was a middle-aged man with a long scar above his left eyebrow, and in his right hand, he held a black sword that looked as if it had been burned. The man, supporting the society leader, answered the previous question, the sickle-slaying demon. The sickle-slaying demon? Who is that? It was an unfamiliar nickname that the society leader had heard for the first time. Then the man spoke in a meaningful voice, "A dead man who should have died." Chapter 191. The Test. Part 4. A dead man who should have died. At the words of the middle-aged man with a long scar above his left eyebrow, the society leader, who had released his support and caught his breath, asked in puzzlement. Huh. A dead man who should have died? Literally. The society leader's eyes narrowed. If you think about it in reverse, the phrase "a dead man who should have died" also means not dead and alive. And if you delve deeper, it can also be interpreted as thought to be dead. The sickle-slaying demon. It was a nickname he had never heard of in the martial arts world. Just who was the sickle-slaying demon for him to say such a thing? If he personally mentioned this person, it couldn't be someone to just brush off. After being lost in thought for a moment, the society leader spoke. "Answer me." "Yes." "Did you kill him directly?" "Yes, I ruptured his internal organs with a palm strike and pierced his chest where his heart is with this sword." The scarred middle-aged man held up the black sword that looked charred. At this, the society leader asked. With that extent of injury, he should have definitely died. Surviving was even more impossible. As if agreeing, the man nodded and answered, yes, he should have died. But you're saying this because you think that child earlier might be the sickle-slaying demon who died by your hand? The possibility is extremely low. Then why are you doing this? It goes beyond resemblance to the point where he looks like the same person. Looks like the same person? At those words, the society leader frowned. Then soon. Could it be? Society leader, let me say this in advance, but it's completely different from that. Different? Yes. Then is that really possible? That's why I'm also concerned. Concerned. In the end, even the slightest possibility couldn't be ruled out. At this, the society leader stared intently at the man and asked, coughing, cough cough. Why did you kill that sickle-slaying demon? He was digging into our traces. At the middle-aged man's answer, the society leader's eyes turned strange. It was a kind of agitation. What was the meaning of our that caused him to react like this? Soon, the society leader spoke. Digging into traces. Then that changes the story. Left guardian. Yes. Verify the truth about the death of that guy called the sickle-slaying demon. So far, there was no connection other than the resemblance. Therefore, the society leader requested confirmation. At this, the middle-aged man clasped his hands together in a formal gesture and answered. Understood. If there is even the slightest possibility of him being the sickle-slaying demon, what should be done? For the sake of the future, it would be better to deal with him immediately. After catching his breath for a moment, the society leader spoke in a murderous voice. No. But if that's the case, wait until he completes the mission. Ah. The man, understanding the society leader's intention to utilize him until the end, grinned and answered. I will do as you command. Asterisk. When Mok Jayanan and Siap Chun, one of the 5 tigers and the 3rd captain commander of the main building, and Mong Muyak, another member of the 5 tigers and the vice leader's son, were standing side by side. In front of them, vice leader Mong Siocheon, with his hands clasped behind his back, spoke. Since there was a delay and time is limited, I will now explain the mission. Mission. It was truly a troublesome situation. If it was a confidential mission important enough for the society leader to personally summon them and the vice leader to explain, it definitely wouldn't be an ordinary mission that could be taken lightly. Mok Jayanan glanced at Shadow Clan Master Huan Yasian, who was standing by the entrance, far behind vice leader Mong Siocheon. Seeing that even he, who was in charge of information and confidentiality, was kept at a distance, it could be inferred that this mission was not discussed with the Shadow Clan Master at all. If that's the case, it means the Shadow Clan Master cannot be trusted in this mission. Mok Jayanan could deduce this from the fragmentary information. At that moment, Vice Leader Mong Siocheon began the explanation. I will first talk about the objective of this mission. The goal is to abduct a person imprisoned in a certain place and bring them back to our sect. At those words, Siap Chun, the 3rd captain commander of the main building, lightly raised his hand and asked, is the person we need to abduct a member of our sect? At that question, Vice Leader Mong Siocheon stared intently at Siap Chun and eventually answered. No. For now. If not, is it an enemy? At Siap Chun's follow-up question, the vice leader frowned and answered in a somewhat heavy voice. Whether the person being abducted is an enemy or ally is not something you should be concerned about. Your job is solely to use any means necessary for the mission and bring that person to the main building of our Heaven and Earth Society's inner fortress. Just who is it that information about the person to be abducted is restricted? Siap Chun spoke in a somewhat puzzled tone. That may be so, but I'm asking how we're supposed to abduct a person, not an object, with such limited information. At his words, Mok Jayanan also nodded. Siap Chun's questioning was valid. At this, Vice Leader Mong Siocheon shook his head and answered the question. Information about the person to be abducted will be revealed once you leave the sect and arrive at the place where they are imprisoned. Once we arrive at the place? At those words, Mok Jiangun realized. He didn't know who they were supposed to abduct, but it seemed that information about the person to be abducted shouldn't be leaked within the sect before they left for the mission. From this, two things could be inferred. 1. Is it someone who could create negative public opinion? Judging from the society leader's personality, although he had a fickle side, he was quite authoritarian and tended to push through with what he wanted to do. If the society leader kept information confidential about the person he wanted to bring, there was a high probability that the executives or members of the Heaven and Earth Society would view it negatively. 2. Spies. Revealing the information only after reaching the location of the target to be abducted was a precaution against the information being known to internal members. This could be to thoroughly maintain secrecy for the success of the mission, but conversely, it also meant that there could be spies within the inner fortress. Not even discussing the mission with the Shadow Clan master could mean they judged that there might be spies even among the key executives. The corners of Mok Jiangun's mouth twitched as his thoughts reached this point. Although all of this was mere speculation, if even a part of it was true, it had the potential to create a stir in this massive organization. At that moment, the vice leader said, "Any more questions?" "No." Swish. Realizing that further questioning would only confirm that information about the mission was restricted, Siep Chun lowered his raised hand, having nothing more to say. Then Vice Leader Mong Xiaoqian spoke with his arms crossed. "This mission will naturally be revealed later, but until then, it requires confidentiality. So don't have too many doubts. Understood?" "Yes." Everyone answered simultaneously. Then Vice Leader Mong Xiaoqian continued. "The personnel deployed for the mission are divided into an advance team and a follow-up team. The advance team has already departed, so once you arrive, you will hear more details from them." Advance team? It seemed there were more people they had to work with. Whatever the mission was, Mok Jiangun hoped it would be something that could be completed as quickly as possible rather than being difficult. Of course, with only this fragmentary information, it was still impossible to gauge the situation. The first gathering point where the advance team is waiting is Anak in Henan Province. Anak? At those words, the eyes of the three people, including Mok Jiangun, turned strange. That was because Anak in Henan Province was right near Kaifeng, 1, the capital where the imperial palace was located. If the first gathering point to meet up with the advance team and receive information was Anak, then it's the capital. All three of them could guess the true gathering point for the mission. Asterisk. After the brief explanation of the mission was over, Shadow Clan Master Huan Yaxian, who had been waiting for Mok Jiangun before departure, called him over with a gesture. Keeping a distance from the others, the two began a conversation. "Master. It has turned out quite coincidentally." "Yes." "Did you hear where the mission will be carried out?" "They didn't tell us. They only informed us of the first gathering point." "Is that so?" "Then the capital Kaifeng seemed certain." At Mok Jiangun's words, Shadow Clan Master Huan Yaxian smiled. It wasn't because he was his disciple, but this fellow was indeed clever. "Oh ho ho. That's right. It's Kaifeng. To be precise, it's the Imperial Palace in Kaifeng." At the mention of the Imperial Palace, Mok Jiangun's eyes flashed with surprise. He had suspected it might be in the capital, but he didn't expect it to actually be the Imperial Palace. "There are eyes watching, so don't show any signs." "Understood. There's no time, so for now, I'll inform you about our sect spies in the Imperial Palace." "Thank you." In fact, the main reason why Shadow Clan Master Huan Yaxian and his disciple Mok Jiangun were assigned to this mission was precisely this. If Mok Jiangun, the successor of the Shadow Clan, was directly involved in the mission, the Shadow Clan spies in the Imperial Palace would cooperate even more desperately. The involvement of Mong Muyak, the son of Vice Leader Mong Xiaoqian, was in a similar context. The spies of the society leader's direct subordinates managed by Mong Xiaoqian were also in the Imperial Palace, so they would obediently cooperate with Mong Muyak. "Is there Memorize it in your head. You can do it, right? Yes, I understand. And take this with you. The Shadow Clan Master handed Mok Jiangan a jade token with a tiger engraved on it. What is this? If you have this token and the code I told you, they will cooperate without question. Yes. Mok Jiangan accepted the jade token. However, he felt something else on his palm as he received the token. It was a ring? It seemed to be a ring worn on the finger. It appeared to have been intentionally handed over hidden under the jade token. Shadow Clan Master Huan Yixian spoke in an even more whispering voice than before. It's the identification token of a member. Keep it with you. Why this? From now on, I will give you an order as a senior member of our order, not the Heaven and Earth Society. As a senior member? Mok Jiangan's eyes narrowed. Is this mission somehow entangled with the Fire Faith Order as well? While he was puzzled, Shadow Clan Master Huan Yixian quietly whispered. The person you will be abducting in this mission is the Holy Guardian of our order. The Holy Guardian? He had heard about this from Huan Yixian before. In the Fire Faith Order, there were two highest positions, one being the sect leader and the second being the Holy Guardian, who communicated with the sacred fire and was in charge of rituals. However, according to what Huan Yixian had told him, the sect leader of the Fire Faith Order had lost his life, and the Holy Guardian's whereabouts were unknown. At this, Mok Jiangan quietly asked, "Why is the society leader looking for him?" It didn't make sense. Didn't he say that the Fire Faith Order had left the righteous path and was rejected by martial artists? Then why was the society leader of the Heaven and Earth Society trying to abduct the Holy Guardian of the Fire Faith Order? To Mok Jiangan's question, Huan Yixian answered, I can't tell you the details now. However, the success or failure of this matter depends solely on you. What is the mission? If you succeed in the abduction in the society leader's confidential mission, before returning, smuggle out the Holy Guardian. At those words, Mok Jiangan's eyes turned strange. He had guessed that there might be conflicting issues at some point while pretending to be a member of the Fire Faith Order and having a foot in both camps, but he didn't expect it to come in this way. This has become troublesome. If he failed in the abduction or if something went wrong while smuggling out the abducted Holy Guardian, he could become a traitor to the Heaven and Earth Society. No, he would already be considered a traitor the moment he tried to smuggle him out. On the other hand, if he ignored the Shadow Clan Master's order, it would definitely lead to a difficult situation. It was truly a dilemma where neither choice was easy to make. What should I do? Whatever it was, it seemed the moment had come when a choice was necessary. While Mok Jiangan was conversing with Shadow Clan Master Huan Yixian, Vice Leader Mong Xiaoqian was also giving a secret order to his son Mong Muyak, in addition to information about the spies. Keep an eye on Mok Jiangan. Mok Jiangan, you mean? Yes, monitor his every move. Father, why? Who told you to address me like that in a formal setting? At the reprimand of his father Mong Xiaoqian, Mong Muyak lowered his head and answered. I apologize, Vice Leader. But why are you giving such an order? To verify his loyalty. Right. Even if he pledged loyalty in the Corpse Blood Valley, his roots were in the righteous faction. It was too early to completely trust a guy who had only pledged loyalty half a month ago as a person of the Heaven and Earth Society. If there are grounds for suspicion, what should I do? At those words, Vice Leader Mong Xiaoqian took out a small red gourd-like object from his bosom. Then he handed it over to his son Mong Muyak. Take this with you. Is this by any chance? Yes. If that guy makes contact with people from the righteous faction or shows any suspicious signs, use this. You know how to use it, right? Yes. How could he not know? He had witnessed its tremendous effects with his own eyes. However, he had doubts about whether this would work properly on that monster-like guy who endured even the society leader's profound true chi without letting out a single groan. ****. while Mok Jaeung-un and Mong Muyak were each receiving secret orders from the Shadow Clan master and the vice leader. Seop Chun, the third captain commander of the main building who was waiting alone, muttered with a sigh and shrugged his shoulders. This is the fate of someone without backing. Seop Chun's position was different from the other 5 tigers. His family, which originated from a small to medium-sized martial arts clan and had joined the Heaven and Earth Society 20 years ago instead of during its founding, had no influence in the sect. Therefore, he was like a pawn that could be used and discarded at any time. Even in this confidential mission, unlike the others who had reliable executive patrons like the vice leader or the Shadow Clan master, he had no backing to protect him in case of emergency. That meant if an unexpected situation were to occur, his sacrifice could be demanded if things took a turn for the worse. Tisk. Truly a gloomy and boring life. Lost in thought, Seop Chun furtively glanced at Mok Jaeung-un. Although meeting him for the first time today, he seemed to be no ordinary guy. Should he say he was exceptional? There weren't many people who gave him this feeling. Perhaps only the eldest young master. The eldest young master Na Yelriang. He was on a completely different level compared to the society leader's other disciples. Was this the feeling of someone walking the path of hegemony? That was the impression. However, interestingly, the same feeling emanated from Mok Jaeung-un, who was only 17 years old, to a mysterious extent. He didn't seem like someone who would be under anyone. Come to think of it, if this mission was successfully completed, the society leader had promised to take him in as his 4th disciple. That meant the guy would also gain the qualification to be a successor. Although his support base was weak, Seop Chun, who had been intently watching Mok Jaeung-un, faintly raised the corners of his mouth. Life is only lived once anyway. Should I take a gamble?